Some stories begin with privilege. Mine began with struggle. I was born in a small village in Gorkha, Nepal, a place where time moved slowly, where life was simple but hard, and where dreams felt like distant stars, always visible but out of reach. Our house stood on a patch of land covered with tin sheets that barely held back the wind and rain. In the winter, the cold cut through the walls. In the monsoon, the water dripped from the ceiling onto our beds. But this was home. School was miles away, and every morning I walked those dusty roads in sandals so worn out they barely held together. Some days I walked barefoot. The scorching heat burned my feet in the summer. The cold, biting wind froze them in the winter. But I kept walking because education was my only escape from this life. When I wasn't at school, I was in the fields, herding goats and cows. I wandered through thick forests, watching over them, lost in my thoughts, wondering if life had anything more to offer than this. Hunger was a familiar feeling. Some nights, we went to bed with only a few bites of rice. Meat was a luxury, one we rarely tasted. And yet, we never complained, because in our village, this was normal. This was life. Leaving my village, the battle of survival begins. At 16, I left everything behind and moved to Kathmandu. I was chasing education, but what I found was struggle beyond anything I had known. I rented a tiny room, barely big enough to sleep in. The walls were thin, the nights were cold, and loneliness became my closest companion. Money was always a problem. There were days I couldn't afford drinking water. I couldn't afford proper meals, so I bought what little I could, the head and legs of a chicken, the cheapest parts, just to survive another day. Kathmandu was a city full of people, yet I had never felt more alone. No one knew my name, no one cared if I ate, no one asked if I was okay. The city was unforgiving, and life felt like a constant fight against hunger, against exhaustion, against hopelessness. Coming to Australia, a new kind of struggle. At 17, I stepped onto a plane for the first time in my life. I was coming to Australia, a country I had only seen in pictures. A land of opportunity, they said. But what no one told me was how hard it would be to survive alone in a foreign land. I lived in a hostel, surrounded by strangers. The food was different, the people were different, the language was different. I missed home, I missed my family, but I had no choice. I had to adapt. And so I worked. 2 jobs, 3 jobs, sometimes even 4 jobs at once. Dishwashing, cleaning, lifting, running. I did whatever it took. The pay was low, just $10 an hour. I still remember the night I cut my hand while washing dishes. A piece of broken glass sliced through my skin. Blood mixed with the water. I looked at it, but I didn't stop, because stopping meant losing money, and losing money meant going hungry. Breaking down, the lowest points. Then came the pandemic. I got COVID once, then I got it again. The second time, the people I lived with forced me out. They were scared for their safety, and I understood that. But understanding didn't make it easier. I was sick, exhausted, and suddenly homeless. I still had to work. I still had to pay rent. So I pushed through, working over 100 hours a week. Work, eat, sleep, repeat. No rest, no breaks, just survival. I would come home late at night, open my books, and try to study. But no matter how hard I tried, exhaustion won. I failed every subject that semester. That failure crushed me. I had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and still, it wasn't enough. Depression crept in. I stared at the ceiling at night, wondering if I would ever make it. I stopped talking to people. I stopped caring about anything. And one day, I found myself staring at a bottle of medication, wondering if this was how my story would end. But then, something inside me refused to give up. The turning point, climbing back up. I had come too far, struggled too much, given up too much, and I couldn't let all of that be for nothing. So I kept going. I saved every dollar. No shopping, no luxuries, no distractions. Every cent had a purpose. And at 21, I did the impossible. I bought a home for my parents in Nepal, the home they had dreamed of, the home they deserved, the home that was built not with money, but with years of sweat, sacrifice, and struggle. At 22, I bought my first car, a small thing to many, but to me, it was proof that I had made it through the worst. Looking back, the message of my life. Today, I look back at the boy walking barefoot to school, the teenager eating scraps in Kathmandu, the young man bleeding over a sink of broken dishes, the student drowning in failure and depression. And I realized something.